diving right in, we have talked about this and touched on it several times in this podcast, and that is Ted and I, since 2019, have said that Joe Biden was addled and suffering from dementia. He had all the signs. We said it without glee. We weren't like being assholes about it. We weren't, oh, look at the old guy. But every time you and I wrote about it, every time we talked about it, every time we cartooned about it, you and I caught a rash of shit. Well, for 4 years during that administration. Don't forget, we were hearing from our Democratic friends, and I know you did too, Ted, that Joe Biden wasn't just not addled. He was possibly, and I'm not making this up, folks. This is a quote from many of our Democratic, statist Democratic friends. Joe Biden was probably the greatest president of the 20th century.
Some people even said ever.
Yeah, because Abe Lincoln.
Better than George Washington.
What did he do?
Better than Abe Lincoln.
What did he do? Nothing.
What did Thomas Jefferson
nothing like
do?
Joe Biden, who, could be president and still be demented. No, and so this is going to serve as sort of a bit of a therapy session for Ted and I, because we have some trauma from those 4 years, because the whiplash, the backlash, the response, the hate, the venom directed. Ted got it more than I did, because Ted, I think people still can perceive as a liberal, and in their minds that means Democratic mouthpiece. And so anytime Ted steps out of that lane, they go bananas. It's like myself. I worked on both of Reagan's campaigns. I've worked on Republican politics. I have a degree from the California Republican Party Campaign Management College. But if I ever, when in the last few years, if I go outside of the Republican lane, I get blasted, and I mean blasted. But nothing got us more hate, more vitriol, more venom than when Ted and I had the temerity to point out that, given our own family experiences, we could watch Joe Biden, we could listen to Joe Biden and say, this man is sliding into dementia. He was having the dementia shuffle. And when we had the temerity to point this out, we were shouted at vigorously and without any kind of constraints. And we're here now. Ted, you want to take it from here? The latest, there's a book coming out.
There is a book coming out. Jake Tapper, who, full transparency, Scott and I both know, and he's a friend of political cartooning and political cartoonists. He's a very nice man. He's my neighbor here in New York. And Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson of Axios, who I'm not familiar with, are co-writing an upcoming book, comes out May 20th, called Original Sin: President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. This book supposedly exposes an alleged cover-up of Biden's serious decline based on over 200 interviews with Biden administration and Democratic Party insiders. The book highlights how Biden's team concealed his diminishing faculties, a narrative that Democrats are now grappling with following the post-2024 election loss. Top figures like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, who were either had nothing to say or just outright lied about it, are now implicated as likely aware of the truth, per sources at the Wall Street Journal and others. Barack Obama is now reported to have suspected Biden's condition. The party, however, refused to admit any of this. Tapper, who previously downplayed concerns, now is framing the Biden's reelection campaign as narcissistic and reckless. And so now that it doesn't matter and that it's too late to think about it, Democrats are distancing themselves from the cover-up narrative that they once rejected. So they're just saving their own asses. And
I knew all the time, which is, okay, Ted has said this and he's right. You're either stupid or you're corrupt. What Ted just described, what's going to be described in this book, and as Ted said, we both know Jake, we both like him, but this is repulsive, and I'll tell you why. having grown up in a newsroom where my dad ran television newsrooms across the country, where I, at the age of 18, walked into my first newspaper newsroom and fell in love with the industry and fell in love with that. I know the conversations newsroom have. And when their reporter or reporters who covered the White House would come and talk to them, they knew. This was a coup d'etat, Ted, and these are unelected people who were running the Oval Office because this guy, Joe Biden, could not. And that to me is criminal. Now I'm going to full disclosure here. I was listening to you were doing your center clip, which is a thing Ted and I do. It's their mini podcasts. And you mentioned there should be congressional hearings. I don't call for those very often because, well, I think they're silly, a lot of them. But we need to find out precisely what happened. This is a call. I know Ted joins me. This is a full-throated call for the Senate and the House to have hearings as to what exactly happened. Now, given the players in the House and the Senate,
in this case, what did the president not know?
No.
And when did he not know it?
Exactly. I mean, this is so criminal and so despicable, in my view, that, and now these guys coming out saying, oh, we're writing books. We knew it all the time. Well, then why in the name of God did you yell at people like Ted and I who were trying to say,
instead of inviting us on your show?